Top 5, a show where we count things down from number 5 all the way to number 1. This week on the show, Top 5 Oops. Top 5 Oops. Now, I will say that there are more self-oopses in my list than other oopses. But my number 5, I think, is a pretty good example of a major oops. And that is the Mars Climate Orbiter. You guys may remember this, but the Mars Climate Orbiter was supposed to launch from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and it was a combined work between Lockheed Martin and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Problem was, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory used the metric system for everything, right? Meters, kilograms, etc. And Lockheed Martin decided they would use the English system, pounds, feet, inches, etc., in all of their calculations for everything. So they spend who knows how many millions, if not billions of dollars to get the Mars Climate Orbiter up into the atmosphere, however many years across our solar system to Mars. And the orbiter entered the Martian atmosphere at an altitude of only 50 kilometers instead of the planned 150 kilometers because, oops, we used the metric system. Or, oops, I think it was more the oops, we used the English system. And because it entered too low in the atmosphere, it burned up in the atmosphere.
Wow.
Yeah. So a little bit of a major oops when you guys aren't on the same page with the English system and the metric system. I am fine by switching over to the metric system, to be quite honest. That doesn't bother me at all. Yes, it will take a little bit of adjustment, but man, I had to go out and screw something in, and it was a metric screw instead of and it was a hex screw instead of a English system screw. And man, my socket set was all messed up, and it took me like 15 minutes to find the right frickin' socket to go onto that head. So yeah, the Mars Climate Orbiter, my number 5. Oops. Now, Matthew, I'm sure you've got a lot of oopses that you would like to share. What do you have for your number 5?
This one was a lot harder than I expected. And I feel like part of that is the fact that nobody in my house listens to me anymore. So when I ask for help, they just go, "Whoop." But that's fine. I'm not bitter. You know, life is filled with its little things. But I started thinking about, what do I think of when you say, hey, what an oops or a gaffe or a goof or an error? And then I started thinking about what, in my mind, and I say that as a Generation Xer, is one of the biggest movies of all time. And that movie, of course, is Star Wars. Some people may call it Episode 4. Those people are not Generation Xers because we saw it when it was called Star Wars. But Star Wars, aside from people tearing apart little bits and pieces and, oh, why would Darth Vader do this? What if that rock just... No, none of that. None of that. I'm just saying that after the Battle of Yavin and all the ships come back and they land in the hangar and everybody's cheering and yelling, and Luke Skywalker runs across and hugs Princess Leia and yells, "Carrie!" The biggest movie in the whole world, George Lucas took over the world, created an entire subgenre of nonsense, but Luke Skywalker cannot remember the name of his own sister, and so has to call her by the name of the actress. Now, I think that Mark Hamill, who's one of the funniest people in the world, has actually explained this as, I'm an idiot. But I think it's just one of those nice moments that I don't think they've even gone in and dubbed it out. I think it's harder to hear now, but they haven't dubbed over it with him saying Leia. But it's a very clear scream of, "Hey, Carrie," and then they hug, and then it's a whole big thing. But it's just one of those moments that I've always kind of laughed at in the back of my head. And it feels like something that somebody should have caught somewhere along the line. That's why it's my number 5.
Yeah, I think if they ever did redub it, I think they should get Mark Hamill to just go, instead of shouting Leia, he should just go Leia and just do it like that.
Well, especially really Mark Hamill now, right? Where it's he runs and he's like, "Leia."
Yeah.
Have him do his Joker voice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Rodrigo, what do you have for your number 5? Whoops.
So the majority of the blips that I have on this list are historical or pop culture or whatever. No. So I figured I'd put one in here that is an actual mistake that I made, just to soften things up and to show that I'm not just making fun of other people. And my number 5 is that time I ran over a traffic cone. And you're like, well, that doesn't sound so bad, but okay, so here's what happened. I was driving from the mall home with my sister and one of my friends. I was visiting my parents. So like a friend from high school and my sister in the car. We're driving back, and it is a madhouse because it is the holidays. And when I say the mall, I mean the malls that are like in the north side of like the Columbus Metroplex, which are basically like multi-store complexes that sometimes you have to like get in your car and drive to a different chunk of complex to continue to look into the mall. So it's a madhouse. Traffic is terrible. Everything's backed up. There's no help to be found. So there were no cops or anything like that. And there's like just these cones. And one of the cones is just flopped over. And I'm like, I can't really drive around it. I'm just going to trust, because it was on the ground, right? It was like, so it wasn't like sticking straight up. I was like, I'm just going to trust that my car has enough clearance for this. Now, you might think Rodrigo drives a Yaris. That's a ridiculous notion, but I wasn't driving my car. I was driving my parents' car. And so I drive over it. And for the first maybe full second, I'm like, okay, good. Nothing happened. And then I hear this awful scraping noise, and I can literally feel some like pressure against the car, right? Where it's like, I'm not going as fast as I should be going. And I'm like, oh, I think I shouldn't have run over that cone. And like both of like my sister and my friend are like, you think maybe you shouldn't have run over the cone? So again, traffic is moving, but it's like very slow. So what feels like an hour before I could like, which was probably literally like 3 minutes probably before I can like pull into a parking lot and check. And so I pull into a parking lot, and sure enough, there's the like cone wedged into like sort of near the wheel well. And I'm like, oh no, if this like somehow got caught into the wheel well and like, like it like unraveled the plastic in some way, and now it's like tied around the whatever's. And I'm like, okay, let me pull this out. And I start to pull it out, and it is like wedged in there. And I'm like, oh no. And I just keep pulling and pulling and like pressing against it in different ways. And finally I managed to wedge it out. As an aside, it's the holidays in Ohio. So it is just like a light layer of sleet on everything. Like it is freaking cold. I'm not wearing my gloves because we were just going to the mall, and now I'm having to pull this out. All around, this is like pretty minor. Nothing happened. I'm just gonna leave the cone here. Hopefully somebody will find it. I'm not gonna put it back to where it was, because how would I even do that, right? With traffic being the way it is. But anytime I think to myself, anytime I think to myself, I could probably do this and it'll be fine. Like this flashes back to my brain, and I think maybe I should just spend a little bit more time like figuring out a way to do this that is maybe not going to end in catastrophe. So my number 5, that time I ran over a traffic cone.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, we are into our number 4. Whoops. And my number 4 is one called Special Order 191. If you are a Civil War buff, you probably already know this story. But at one point, the Confederacy, the idiots, they were going to raid Washington and attack our capital. Except that Special Order 191 was lost. Because during the Maryland campaign, General Lee wrote copies of these orders to be distributed to all the different Confederate officers that explained what they were going to do. And one of those copies went missing. And it was found by a Union soldier by the name of Corporal Mitchell. And he just so happened to find it in a site where the Confederate Major General had just left. And it was wrapped up in a bunch of cigars. And he didn't realize what it was at first, opened it up, saw cigars, and then he said, hey, what's this? What's written on this paper? And realized that it was the plans to invade Washington. And so he took it to his general, who saw it and said, well, I guess we know their plans. I guess we can meet them and stop Lee's invasion at the Battle of, Antietam, I think is how you say it. Antietam, that's it. And so they stopped Lee's forward progress there. Oops. That is my number 4. Oops. Special Order 191. All right, Matthew, what do you have for your number 4? Oops.
My number 4, much like Rodrigo, I thought about this and I thought, should I get something in there to indicate that I'm not making fun of people and, not trying to be cool? Should I put in something that I have done wrong? And it occurred to me that I thought I was wrong, but it turns out I was mistaken. And so I am just going to make fun of people. But they're all fictional people with one exception. I don't know who this person or persons unknown were, was, could have been, should have been. But for me, in the modern world, one of the biggest goofs, gaffes, slip-ups, oops, is the casting of one Jonathan Depp as Tonto in the Lone Ranger remake of, 2012. Because, Johnny Depp was he was not at the peak of his fame or his popularity. He's not himself a Native American. He's not really a serious character. And so really what it was, hey, what if we just took the pirate shtick and put a funny hat on it and said that this was, this Native American character? And don't get me wrong, I'm not like a big believer in fictional characters being sacrosanct and untouchable, but there are a few where you're just like, maybe we should, give them a little bit of respect. And I feel like Tonto is really one of those characters, but I'm just like,
it's a character that hasn't gotten much respect. So here's a great opportunity to sort of redeem the whole franchise that way.
Yeah, and you have to ask yourself, if I'm going to make this decision, if I'm going to do something here and I'm going to have this actor playing the character, for the love of God, don't glue a stuffed bird to his head. And it's just, honestly, I've seen the movie. It's not terrible. It's no worse than a Mission Impossible film, generally speaking. It's just the fact that the central character here is so just conceptually bad. And I say the central character because nobody knows really who Armie Hammer is, except for the fact that he wants to eat people. And that's, your kink is your kink and whatever. But I really can't say anything other than, yeah, because that was bad. And the worst part is, I think Westworld started a year or two later and featured several really talented actual Native American actors, including one who did an entire episode where he spoke entirely the legitimate language of his people. And I'm just like, see, this could have been, but my number 4 is Johnny Depp.
Rodrigo, what do you have for your number 4?
My number 4 is something that's very recent, in fact, right down topical. If you're a big nerd. So for context, Magic the Gathering, right? Card game. Everybody likes it. They have started doing this thing called Universes Beyond, where they are doing cards from other properties. So now you can have your Usras and your Mishras fighting Spider-Man, and literally SpongeBob SquarePants. That is not hyperbole. There are multiple SpongeBob cards in the game now. So recently they announced that they're going to have standard legal sets for Universes Beyond. What that means is that those cards specifically will be legal in most formats, if not all formats. And one of the big ones that they revealed recently was Spider-Man. There's going to be a Spider-Man Magic the Gathering set. Now, you might think Rodrigo's saying this is a huge mistake. I am saying that, but that's not the huge mistake. So some people hate it, some people love it. It's all good. But recently, like a good solid month after the Spider-Man set announcement, somebody from Magic came out and said, by the way, the Spider-Man announcement is only going to be for paper Magic. In Magic Arena and Magic Online, we are going to do a mechanically identical but visually different set with sort of Magic the Gathering stuff. So anything that's mechanical will be identical except for the card name, because that matters sometimes. And it'll have different art. So for example, your like the Spider-Man card that they show off, whatever character is on there will still be like a human spider adventurer or whatever his type line was, because that's game text, right?
Rakadid Man.
I was gonna say. Yeah, who knows? Because yeah, it's gonna have to be. They're saying it's gonna be Magic themed, and it's like way to spend all this time scrunching superheroes and high fantasy, two things that actually are weirdly often very incompatible, and finally squishing them together to your liking, only to turn around and like try to scoop the superhero out from it. It's like somebody is like, okay, here's a bag of chocolate chips. You have to bake these chocolate chips into a bunch of cookies. It's like, okay, you make some delicious chocolate chip cookies, and then your boss comes in and is like, actually, half of these are supposed to be chocolate bars. So you need to pick out all the chocolate chips. There cannot be a single crumb of cookies, or we will be sued by Marvel Snap.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. This doesn't sound like a Marvel oops. It sounds like a Marvel Snap. Oh, snap.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the problem, right? Wizards was not able to get the rights, the digital rights, for making a Spider-Man card game. And so either they started the process and didn't realize that this was going to happen until halfway, which is an incredibly embarrassing mistake, or from the beginning they were like, well, this is not like, we're going to make so much money from paper Magic that we can just leave the digital side off to dry, right? Which is in and of itself a direction mistake, right? A thematic mistake. So no matter what, this whole Spider-Man thing is a mess. I'm sure you can listen to this episode 6 months from now, hello, future people, and you will say, oh, Rodrigo, you were exaggerating all of the problems with Magic the Gathering. And to you, I say, shut up.
We are in to our number 3 in our category this week of top 5 oops. And now we enter the look at all the dumb things Steven has done, which is fine, because I truly believe if you cannot find multiple things that you have screwed up on, then you've got an issue that needs to be dealt with. But my number 3 started when I was a young lad. I think I know I was able to drive, so it had to have been between the ages of 14 and probably 16. But during the summer, my friend Mike, his family would go around to different craft shows and sell crafty things, wooden product crafty things. And occasionally I would go with them just because it was fun to hang out with my friend Mike for a weekend, be away from home, and, help out and do some things. And so we were at Washburn University. I don't think it was July 4th weekend. It might have been. But there was a big, craft show on the Washburn University campus. And, they have craft fairs and fun booths, and There are all sorts of young people walking around, young girls that a young boy who's somewhere between the age of 14 and 16 might be interested in. And they also have these things. What are they called? They're like shaved ice, and you serve them in a conical cup. It's not an ice pop or anything like that, but they've got the shaved ice, and then
Snow cone?
Snow cone. That's it. And then they pour all of the colored flavoring on top of that. Stupid me, who's never had one of these before, was like, yes, I would like a cherry one, please. And then, of course, one of the things that happens when you have one of these snow cones is all the liquid goes into the little cup area. And so I'm going in for my first taste of this snow cone. And of course, all of the cherry coloring just comes out and pours out all over the front of my shirt, which wouldn't be that big of a deal, except I was wearing an all white shirt. And we weren't going back to the hotel to get a different shirt or going home to get a different shirt. And it was a hot day. So that stuff instantly dried and stained. And so here's a me walking around. And my solution was, how about if I just turn my shirt around backwards? No one will notice that. Oops. Stephen ate a cherry snow cone. And I will be honest with you, ever since that day, I have not had a snow cone since. Because
they're not that. There's not much to them.
No, they're not. But I'm not going to end up with another Stephen blew his chance with all of the cute 14 to 16-year-old girls his age, appropriate age at the time, at the craft fair. I don't want to screw up with some 50-year-old lady today by being an embarrassment in front of her. So my number 3, the snow cone incident. Matthew, what do you have for your number 3?
I think about all the times that I may have messed up in front of ladies, and I realized that it's probably fine because the real messing up would have been her seeing my personality. And so my number 3 is the story of another young lad who doesn't necessarily have the best luck with the ladies or skeletons because one exploded, blew his arm right off. But people do love Randus Duthane. And I understand why. In a group of people, the quiet, smart guy kind of has a thing going for him. But in, I believe, season 3 of the Critical Hit podcast, you should check it out. It's a good show. There's this ongoing war in the Astral Sea where there's like, oh no, the gods are all attacking. Oh, what are we going to do? Oh, well, we're going to probably gather people. Oh, okay, that sounds good. Then we need some stuff. Okay, what stuff do we need? Well, we need some of this and some of that and some of that. And I think we need Penelope's chronometer. Oh, okay. So what do? Well, we build this device and we do the whole thing. And then Randus breaks the universe. And so my number 3, Randus breaks the universe, is actually not Randus's fault. It's not even Brian's fault, although it kind of is because, it's a whole thing. But here's the thing about it, and this is the best part about it. Randus broke the universe, and it became one of the coolest ongoing things about the Critical Hit, the Void Saga podcast, because then it was like, ooh, what do we do? Ooh. And of course you could hear Rodrigo's going, and of course, the broken universe became a very important ongoing plot point throughout the rest of the show, which just goes to show you can mess up things terribly, cosmically, mess up everything, destroy time, space, and dimension, and still be a cool steel-handed hero. And that's why my number 3 is the time that Randus broke the universe.
Hey, Rodrigo, what do you have for your number 3? Oopsie.
Oops.
My number 3 is okay. So
lady with the thing, guy.
Most of these I have on here because they resonate with me, right? They're not necessarily the worst thing that have ever happened in the world, except for me running over that cone. But they're things that have made me laugh or have made me say, yeah, of course, or whatever. So my number 3 is about the game Fallout 76. Fallout 76 came out, to say that it was undercooked is an understatement. Like it wasn't even dough. It was like a carton of eggs and a cow and some wheat. Like it was not ready for prime time when it came out. And not only because there wasn't much to do and there were a bunch of bugs, but also there were a bunch of easily exploitable things that weren't properly taken out of the game. My number three is something that somebody found, which is some players got access to a development back room for the game. Now, what that means is that when games are being designed, the designers, developers, as well as like probably testers and stuff, get access to these secret places in the game where they can load up on equipment or whatever, so they don't have to play through the first hour of the game just to test something that happens in the second hour of the game, right? They can, after they've already tested the first hour, they can just go in, load up, and start there. But then those things have to be taken out of the game, and they weren't. So a bunch of players got access to basically the most powerful weapons and armor, like near infinite ammo and all kinds of perks and stuff. And the thing is that Fallout 76, you might not remember, because not everybody remembers Fallout 76, although I hear it's still doing fine, was a multiplayer game which had PvP. So there were people that were like basically walking out of this interdimensional portal with the best gear in the game and just absolutely disintegrating everybody. When the developers found out about it, they tried to close it up or whatever. But it was just like really emblematic of what Fallout 76 was, which was just like a completely unfinished game, right? In some ways, people found bugs that prevented them from playing, and in some other ways, people found bugs that turned them into gods within the game, essentially. So I always think about this anytime a new game comes out and it's like, hey, this looks good. You want to pre-order it? And I'm like, think back about Fallout 76, maybe Mass Effect Andromeda, and I'm like, no, thank you. I'll wait for the first round of reviews at least. So yeah, my number three, pretty much all of Fallout 76, but specifically the backroom exploit.
Yeah, very cool. All right. My number two, I think I've told before, but at one point I had to move from Atlanta to Irvine, California. And driving across the United States is always a fun experience because you get to see this great nation of ours. Unless you're driving through Texas. And then it's like the longest. I mean, you may think that America is big, but like Texas is bigger, especially in West Texas. Like when you leave Dallas Fort Worth and you're heading down to El Paso and you're driving through West Texas, it takes months to drive across Texas, West Texas specifically. And so, in a bunch of nothingness, in a world of emptiness that is West Texas, your foot starts to get a little heavier and heavier and heavier until you are literally in the middle of nowhere doing 120 miles per hour and you see a little yellow flashing light behind you and you're like, ah, crap. And it isn't a real cop. It's Border Patrol and they're passing you doing even faster than you are and they don't even give a care. And I thought, hey, this is pretty cool. Until I got to El Paso, and El Paso comes up on you fast. Mainly because you're going over 100 miles an hour. And, hey, life comes at you fast. So does El Paso. And I pass a highway patrolman, talking to somebody at the side of the road. And I just see him run back to his squad car and take off after me. And I'm just like, oh, this is not good. And so I slow way down and he pulls up behind me and flashes his lights. And I pull over into a gas station at the side of the road. And, being a dumb kid, I go ahead and get out immediately because I figured, oh, this is me being arrested. And, of course, he gets out with his hand on his gun because he's like, oh, here comes the guy after me. I'm going to shoot this guy. Mm-hmm. And he comes up and he's like, what you doing? And I said, oh, I'm moving from Atlanta to California, and I've got to be there on Monday, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you know how fast you were going? I was like, no, I really don't. I was driving from Dallas Fort Worth to, across West Texas, and it's so empty. He's like, yeah, I understand, but do you know how fast you're driving? I'm like, no, I really don't. He said, well, I clocked you 95 and a 65. Now, he's being nice here because I think 5 miles more and I would have gone to jail. And I was like, really? Well, I did not intend to be doing that. I suddenly realized that I was in El Paso and saw the 65 mile per hour sign. So I immediately slowed down, officer. And then he questioned me why I was moving, because in addition to speeding, 95 and a 65, the back of my car was full of electronic equipment, computers, stereos, things that you would have in your possession if you were moving from one side of the country to another. And you needed things like computers and stereos to do your job and to live in your house. And so he's like, get in the car and just wait. I'm like, okay. And so I'm sitting there just, this will be fine. He'll give me a ticket. He comes back a few minutes later and he's like, well, I am being nice to you and only clocking you at 95 and a 65. And he goes, I don't suppose you ever want to come back to El Paso again. And so here's the back of your ticket. Here's where you mail off your fine. And I said, well, thank you, officer. Oops, sorry. I didn't mean to be driving 95 and a 65. And I proceeded to drive a few more miles outside of El Paso until I got into Arizona, New Mexico, Arizona, one of those two. It's all the same. And proceeded to speed along my merry way. When he said, I don't suppose you want to come back to El Paso, I interpreted that as I didn't want to come back to do a court date.
Right.
For this ticket that was only back then, it was only I think $100 is all I had to pay. But, as I've gotten older and thought about it, I've got a feeling that he was telling me to never come back to El Paso again. So since that day in the year 2000, I have never been back to El Paso because of my little oops, my number 2 oops.
Can't believe Steven got banned from a whole ass city.
I know, right?
I know.
That's okay.
And El Paso, no less.
I know, right? So it's no big deal. Although when I did move back to Kansas, I think we did have to. No, we didn't drive through El Paso. We did drive through parts of Texas, but without any penalty. So it's not like they had people lined up just waiting for that Schleicher boy to cross the border again. I could see myself getting pulled over. You don't remember me, do you, boy? Well, I remember you. I've been waiting for this day for 5 years to haul you off. I said never come back, and you're back. No, it was not like that. The guy was actually really nice, but I still felt really bad because, that could have been much, much worse. But that's my number 2. All right, Matthew, what do you have for your number 2? Oops.
My number 2 oops dates to the year, I think, 1965, a year before I was born, but a year about which in this particular arena, I feel like I am relatively well-versed to speak. And of course, that arena being the world of the comic books. So in 1965, Marvel Comics was a huge deal. Marvel had just popped up out of nowhere. And even though they were distributed by one of their competitors and limited to how many books they could put out, they were still selling gangbuster comic books. And so one of the books was a revival of Captain America, who was a 40s superhero, punched Hitler. You know the guy. And
well, not personally, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know him. He could do this all day. But because of the unique way that Marvel was putting out their books, Captain America actually only had half of Tales of Suspense. The other half, of course, I believe belonged to Iron Man. And so in Tales of Suspense number 92, 1965, we get to a point where Stan Lee, who's literally writing the entire Marvel universe for all intents and purposes, and Jack Kirby, who's drawing most of it, are doing a Captain America adventure. And it's one of the most notorious moments in Silver Age Marvel history. Captain America is in battle and he's ready to fight. And Baron Zemo is ready to fight against him. And Captain America stands up and he says the perfect, amazing, tough guy line.
It's
all right
time.
Only one of us is going to walk out of here under his own steam. And it won't be me. it was a big oops. And of course, Stan Lee in later years kind of chalked it up to, I was writing everything all at once, sort of like in the first issue of Spider-Man, where he refers to Pete Parker as Peter Palmer. And there's actually a panel that's where Dr. Octopus is like, so Superman, you cannot. Wait, what? Okay. But yes, I still believe that the It Won't Be Me is probably the most entertaining gaffe, blooper, oopsie of Silver Age comics.
All right, Rodrigo, what do you have for your number 2 oops?
My number 2 oops is I'm trying to move into a more positive space. And this
Don't
is
get there
something
through El Paso.
Yeah, no,
I mean, El
definitely
Paso's
not.
a pretty positive space. They're pretty positive that they want you to drive the speed limit.
They're pretty positive that ain't no Schleicher ever gonna come back to
which
here.
is weird because Schleicher County, Texas is like very nearby El Paso. So
oh, that's great. That's why they hate you so much.
probably.
This must be one of them Schleichers. They beat us in touch 8-man football. I don't know. Just forget it. So my number 2 is something that went viral like in the year 2000, long time ago.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the poorly translated text from the game Zero Wing that eventually became a song, that eventually became a music video, that eventually became one of the first viral videos on the internet. All your base are belong to us.
Yeah.
Someone set up us the bomb.
Someone set up us the bomb. You have no chance to survive. Make your time. All your base are belong to us, right? So this is a game that came out in Japan, and then when it was moved to the US, the localization, a term that probably didn't actually exist back then, at least not for video games, was done by people in-house who, spoke English that they probably had learned in school and never actually, and they clearly weren't fluent, right? There is kind of a thing in that, what was eventually started to be called English, and now I think has a different name precisely for the reason that it's kind of racist. And this does have some mild racist undertones. It's worth talking about simply because, for example, Japanese people come to live in the United States all the time, and they can't always speak English in the best way. And so when they talk, it kind of sounds like this stuff sometimes, and people make fun of them, and that makes them sad. That's not good, right? That is not good. It is worth mentioning also that media in the United States constantly has characters speaking in other languages, and it's often bananas how bad it is as well. So it goes both ways, right? But it is an example of a mistake that really kind of in a very, I don't know, loving way has become part of the culture now. It was probably embarrassing at first, and now, maybe people weren't when they were making fun of it. They were, although like people tend to like really care about their video games, so I don't ever think that they were like, haha, look at how stupid these translators were. I think it was always just like, this is a really funny way of saying this, and it's clearly incongruous with what's actually going on, which is like a worldwide terrorist organization taking over the world or whatever within the context of the game. So yeah, we ended up with All Your Base, a thing that I definitely played over and over again in my dorm room when I was in college. Because that's what you did. You played that. You went to Newgrounds. You played that. And you went to HomestarRunner.com. And then you met Chickadee and the Slappo at the dorm or at the food hall, and you ate some chips.
We have made it all the way to our number ones. Very curious what everybody has for their number one. But my number one is the time I deleted a multi-million-dollar website on my first day of work.
Ooh.
So you may remember a few minutes ago when I was talking about driving from Atlanta to California to go and start my job at a company where basically every blog site, every news site, every newspaper site that you read today, we were doing that a decade before people were like, hey, maybe we should try putting our magazines and newspapers and stuff on the web. And in a bizarre twist of fate, we got our hands on a number of very high profile industry magazines that we were basically putting our original content up on the website along with all of the content from their magazine up on the website. And so 3 months before I started at that company, I was flown out for a formal job interview, and they said, hey, you got some time before your flight. How about we sit you down and show you how to work the site from the back end, doing all the HTMLs and everything. And I have a rudimentary, this is early HTML days, right? So this is not like today where you've got a blog site that you just type in your content and hit publish. This is real like Dreamweaver type stuff back in the day where knowing a little bit of HTML, knowing how to check in and check out documents, specifically checking in and checking out documents, can be very helpful to understand. And so, they showed me all these things. And then, of course, 3 months later, I show up to work and I want to be a good employee. So I show up early on my first day before everyone else really gets in and gets seated to do stuff. And I proceed to write my first story and I hit upload and then I go and check the site. And how come the site is now blank? How come there's nothing there? Holy crap. What did I do? Maybe I just need to hit upload all again. And hit upload all again and still nothing. And of course, hitting upload all erased over all the other stuff that was already up on the site. And so then my cubicle mate comes in. I said, I don't know what's wrong with the website. And he's like, what's going on? He goes, oh crap, I think you just deleted the website. I'm like, oh crap, I'm fired on my first day. And then our main tech guy comes in and I think he liked to wake and bake. And he's like, oh man, what did you do? What did you do, Schleicher? You deleted the whole freaking website, Schleicher. And I'm already feeling bad. And he's just rubbing it in. He's like, I don't know if I can recover this. Give me a second. And he's making a big deal of this for like an hour. And then he's like, yeah, okay, finally. The website's back up. And he had a backup of the site all along. But man, that time I deleted a multi-million-dollar website on my first day on the job was certainly a major oops. But guess what? Just like never driving through El Paso at 95, just like never eating a snow cone again, just like making sure I never wrap important secret missions into the wrapper of cigars or mistaken metric with standard, I have never made that same mistake of deleting an entire website just like that with a click of a button. That is my number one. Oops. Sorry, guys. I hope everything's okay. And of course, I went on to be one of their better employees. So there you go. All right, Matthew, what do you have?
My number one is actually less of a goof or a gaffe or an error than it is a blooper, a notorious blooper, so much so that the people who actually made the show Bloopers and Practical Jokes, which was on for about 1,000 years in the 1980s and aired 15 times a day, every day, used to use this in just incessantly. It would show up all the time. And it is a wonderful, wonderful moment because what happens in this particular blooper, this particular gaffe, is actually just an outtake of a hilarious person being hilarious and then getting one-upped by a person who is not going to be one-upped by the hilarious person. And so my number one is Tim Conway's elephant story from the last season of the Carol Burnett Show. And if you've never heard this story, basically it goes like this. They were doing takes. So when they did the Carol Burnett Show, they would record several different versions of it. And they would record it in front of a live audience. And then some of these would get edited together and they would make the best take into the actual final show. And so they had done a cut through where Tim Conway told a meaningless, stupid story about an elephant during a game. And so they went back to the places, and the producer apparently went around to Vicki Lawrence and said, I'm just warning you, play along. The elephant story is going to be different this time. And so Tim Conway comes out, they do the thing, he comes to the story, and he starts talking about these Siamese elephants who were joined at the trunk. And so people are, giggling. The audience is giggling. Carol Burnett is trying not to break up. Dick Van Dyke, who is really, really good at not cracking up, is giggling a little bit. And of course, Vicki Lawrence will not break. She is playing Mama, and Mama does not laugh. And so he goes through his whole thing about how they couldn't go like the others. They could just go, Caw. And so he's telling the story, and he's finally like, and then them two elephants, they had a little monkey that would come out and dance across their trunks, and then they go, and of course, everyone is laughing. Dick Van Dyke is practically in tears, and Carol is trying to get the moment back on track, and she turns to Vicki Lawrence and says, go, it's your turn, Mama. And Vicki Lawrence says, completely deadpan, I don't know, are you sure that little a-hole's done talking? And everyone is gone. Everyone falls down, including Tim Conway. And of course, it's a moment that I've seen 100,000 times. And every time I see it, I laugh like an idiot because it has nothing to do with the original script, but it's really, really funny. And I don't think anybody has actually seen the actual, I know I've never seen the actual sketch as it would have aired, but I've seen this outtake 100,000 times. And I feel like, for me, if you're saying, hey, it's a blooper, it's a gaffe, it's a thing, this is like the quintessential, the example, maybe the platonic ideal of the blooper. And that's why Tim Conway's Elephant Story is my number one.
All right, there we go. Rodrigo, what do you have for your number one?
My number one is... like I said, I'm trying to shift it to the positive.
Mm-hmm.
It is a well-documented, well-known mistake. In fact, people often use it sort of inspirationally to tell people like, hey, champ, today you may have deleted your entire website, but someday
I'll make the mistake of hiring Matthew. Oops.
Someday you'll make the mistake of hiring a bunch of guys and putting on a top 5 show, and this'll be that. Now,
yeah.
So imagine this. It's a long time ago, and disease runs rampant everywhere, and you are a medical technician who has only one job, and that's to get some cultures of bacteria going so that when everybody gets back from the weekend, they can start experimenting on them. But when you pull out all of these bacteria, or all these bacteria cultures, you find that some of them are dead.
Oh, no.
And they're dead because you accidentally contaminated those petri dishes with some sort of fungus. And now it's like, oh no, I'm going to get in trouble because all these bacteria are dead. But then it's like, wait a minute. These are bacteria that we're trying to kill. And so your name is Alexander Fleming. You just discovered penicillin. And now people will always remember a mistake you made as one of the greatest advancements in medicine. Of course, everybody's had penicillin. Some people are allergic to it. There's now multiple different kinds of penicillin. There's like synthetic penicillin. There's like penicillinates and stuff like that aren't like quite the same thing. But yeah, basically a lot of sort of basically antibiotic science got kickstarted by the fact that somebody probably accidentally like stuck their thumb in a bacteria culture. And now a lot of people are alive that wouldn't otherwise be.
Yeah.
So that's a fixed point in time, and every time the doctor goes back to see him, something hilarious happens, I'm sure.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Our top 5 oops. And what you can do at this moment is head over to our Discord server, join it absolutely free, jump into the top 5 channel, and then you too can share your top 5 oops moments. Why? Because everybody loves a list.
This podcast is copyright 2025 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.